My fellow Americans, today we gather not as Democrats or Republicans, but as citizens of a nation that believes in truth, dignity, and unity. Now, I don't say this lightly, but it's time we have a real conversation. This message isn't about division. It's about direction. I've got something to say to Donald Trump and to the millions watching. Our future is not built on fear, but on hope. It's not shaped by chaos, but by character. So listen closely, because what you hear today might just shake the very foundation of how we move forward together. Let's get to work. Truth must outweigh ego. In a time where voices grow louder and platform, the temptation to speak only what benefits the self has never been greater. Ego tells us to protect our image, to be right at all costs, to win the argument, if it means sacrificing honesty. But truth stands firm, whether it is popular or not. It doesn't bow to applause or retreat in the face of criticism. And when leaders, influencers, or everyday people start choosing ego over truth, the damage spreads far beyond the individual. It weakens trust. It divides families. It erodes nations from the inside. Ego wants to dominate. It wants to control the narrative, to reshape reality so that it serves the person holding the microphone. But truth requires humility. It demands the courage to admit when you're wrong. It asks that we listen more than we speak. Ego says, I know everything. Truth says, there is always more to learn. And in moments of crisis, in moments when the nation trembles or the world watches, the difference between those two paths becomes a matter of integrity or collapse. There is something deeply powerful about a person who chooses truth even when it hurts. The leader who steps up and says, I failed you. Here is what happened, and here's how we fix it. That kind of honesty doesn't make someone weak. It makes them worthy of trust. And make no mistake, trust is the foundation of leadership. You can build wealth with ego. You can even gain followers. But you cannot build lasting respect, real change, or meaningful unity on anything less than truth. The hard part is that ego often feels safer. It offers quick wins. It gives us a way out of admitting our flaws. But truth requires that we sit in discomfort, that we own the damage we've done, that we look people in the eye and say, this is who I was, but this is who I choose to become. And that process, it's not glamorous. It's not always televised, but it's where real growth happens. It's where leaders are forged. In our politics, in our media, in our homes, we are desperate for people who will choose truth over ego. We don't need more actors on the world stage pretending to be strong while hiding behind scripted lies. We need people who are willing to speak plainly, people who are more concerned with serving others than protecting their own legacy. Because when ego drives the car, the destination is chaos. But when truth takes the wheel, even through storms, there's hope on the horizon. We must ask ourselves in every moment, am I protecting truth or am I protecting my pride? That question is not easy, but it is essential. Because if we allow ego to reign unchecked, we become slaves to our own illusions. We convince ourselves we are always right, that everyone else is wrong, and we shut out the very voices that could help us grow. But when we invite truth in, even when it breaks us, it begins to shape us into something stronger. Ego is loud. It shouts for attention. It demands the spotlight. But truth doesn't need to shout. It stands steady, it endures, and in time, it always rises. So if you are standing at a crossroads, unsure of what to say or how to lead, let this guide you. Let truth outweigh your ego. Let it strip away the lies, the pride, the mask. Let it humble you so that it can ultimately elevate you. Because a life, a legacy, a nation built on truth will always outlast one built on ego. Leadership demands accountability. It is not a title, a photo op, or a loud speech at the right time. True leadership is the willingness to stand in the light and the shadow of your decisions. It is the understanding that when you choose to lead, you also choose to carry the weight of your actions. Every success, every failure, every consequence that ripples beyond yourself. Accountability is not optional. It is the foundation that gives leadership its credibility. Without it, leadership becomes nothing more than manipulation, image control, and empty gestures that serve the leader rather than the people. Too often, we see people rise to positions of power and then run for responsibility. They accept the praise when things go right, but point fingers when things go wrong. That's not leadership. That's ego in disguise. Real leaders don't hide behind excuses. They don't bury mistakes beneath distraction or deflect blame to protect their image. They say, this happened under my watch. I own it, and I will fix it. That single sentence can restore trust, bring people together, and inspire action. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. Accountability means being answerable to more than your base, your board, or your popularity. It means answering to the truth. It means recognizing that the people you lead are watching not just what you say, but what you do when no one is clapping. Do you take shortcuts? Do you dodge hard questions? Do you stay silent when injustice stares you in the face? Leadership that lacks accountability is like a structure built without a foundation. It might look strong for a moment, but eventually it collapses under its own weight. Being accountable doesn't mean you'll always have the answers. It doesn't mean you'll never make a mistake. In fact, the very act of leading guarantees that mistakes will happen. But what matters most is how you respond to them. Do you grow from them, or do you cover them up? Do you listen to the criticism, or do you silence it? The strength of a leader is not measured by how well they avoid failure, but by how they respond to it when it comes. In times of crisis, accountability becomes even more essential. Where people are afraid, hurting, or divided, they look to leaders not just for direction, but for example. They want to see someone who won't run when things get hard, someone who takes responsibility, even when it's inconvenient. Because when people see that their leader is willing to own their decisions, it gives them courage. It gives them clarity. It gives them the sense that no matter how dark things get, someone is willing to stand in that darkness with them and lead with integrity. But accountability is not just about the public stage. It starts in private, behind closed doors, in quiet moments, in tough conversations with your team, your family, or yourself. It's the discipline to admit, I was wrong, and the maturity to ask, how can I be better? It's the humility to invite feedback, even when it stings. And it's the strength to change when the truth demands it. Leadership without accountability is dangerous. It breeds corruption, breeds distrust, it breeds division. It tells people that power comes without consequence, that leaders are above the rules. But leadership with accountability, that builds movements, that builds legacy, that builds a future where people don't just follow because they have to, but because they believe in the person leading the way. So if you choose to lead, choose accountability. Let it guide your choices, shape your vision, and define your impact. Because in the end, what people remember is not how high you stood, but how honest you stood when it mattered most. Leadership is a privilege, and the price of that privilege is accountability. Democracy is not a weapon. It's a responsibility. It was never meant to be used as a tool to crush opposition, silence dissent, or manipulate outcomes. It was built on the idea that every voice matters, that power must be shared, and that the will of the people should be protected, not exploited. When democracy is treated like a weapon, it becomes something ugly, something dangerous. But when it is honored as a responsibility, it becomes one of the most powerful forces for justice, equality, and human progress the world has ever known. Too often we see people who claim to fight for democracy only when it benefits them. They raise their voices in the name of freedom, but silence those who disagree. They speak of law and order, but only apply it selectively. They demand transparency from others while hiding their own actions in the shadows. That is not democracy. That is self-interest disguised in patriotic language. Democracy demands more than that. It requires sacrifice, patience, and a deep respect for the rights of others, even when those others challenge us. Being part of a democracy means accepting that you won't always get your way. It means respecting election results even when your candidate loses. It means defending the freedom of the press even when the headlines criticize you. It means allowing peaceful protest even when it makes you uncomfortable. These aren't weaknesses. They are the very proof that democracy is alive. They show that the system does not belong to one man, one party, or one ideology. It belongs to all of us. And because of that, we all have a duty to protect it. Democracy does not survive on autopilot. It requires active participation. It depends on voters who are informed, leaders and citizens who are willing to speak up, stand up, and show up. It's easy to take democracy for granted when it feels stable, but history has shown us that it can be fragile. All it takes is one generation that stops caring, or one leader who stops listening, and suddenly the freedoms we thought were permanent start to fade. And so the responsibility falls on each of us to vote not just in presidential elections, but in local ones. To read beyond the headlines, question what we're told, and challenge the lies that threaten to divide us. To engage with people we disagree with, not to win arguments, but to understand each other better. To reject the idea that democracy is a game where only one side can win, and to embrace the truth that democracy is a collective journey toward a more perfect union. Some will try to weaponize democracy to use its institutions as shields for corruption or platforms for hate. They will twist its rules and push its boundaries, hoping no one notices until it's too late. That is why responsibility matters so deeply. Because every time we look away, every time we shrug our shoulders and say, "That's just politics," we give space for those who would undo the very freedoms we claim to love. Democracy is a promise we renew every day, not with speeches, but with actions. With how we treat one another, with how we hold our leaders accountable, and with how we defend the principles of justice, equality, and liberty for all. It is not a tool to be aimed at our enemies. It is a sacred trust passed from one generation to the next. And it asks one simple question: in return, will you protect it? Will you serve it? Will you be responsible with the power it gives you? The strength of a democracy is not measured by how loudly its leaders speak, but by how faithfully its people act. It lives in our courage, our compassion, and our commitment to do the right thing. Even when it's hard, even when it costs us something. Because democracy is not a weapon, it's a responsibility. And it belongs to all of us. Character counts more than controversy. In a world addicted to headlines, to shock value, to scandal and spectacle, it's easy to forget that what truly defines a person is not what happens in the spotlight, but how they behave when the cameras are off. Controversy is temporary. It rises, it burns, it fades. But character lasts. It shapes decisions, guides actions, and leaves a legacy that no trending topic can replace. True leadership, true influence, and true integrity are never built on controversy. They are built on the quiet, consistent presence of character. People can say anything in a moment of attention. They can perform for applause, craft sound bites that echo across social media, and stir division to stay relevant. But when the moment passes, what remains is who they really are. How they treat people when there's nothing to gain. Whether they admit their mistakes. Whether they take responsibility or hide behind excuses. Controversy is loud, but character speaks in silence. It is the voice that says, "Do the right thing, even when no one's watching." Character is revealed in pressure, in failure, in how we respond to injustice, temptation, and disappointment. It does not mean perfection. It means honesty. It means doing your best to be consistent in a world that constantly tempts you to bend, to sell out, or to perform. The strongest people are not those who create controversy, but those who can walk through it without losing who they are. People who stay grounded when everything around them is shaking. Too many times, we confuse attention with impact. We think someone is powerful because their name is always in the news, or because they know how to provoke a reaction. But attention fades. Character builds trust, and trust is the true currency of leadership. Without it, no amount of controversy can save you. With it, even in the midst of chaos, people will stand with you, follow you, believe in you, because they know who you are. And they know you won't betray, that when the stakes are high. We live in a culture that elevates the dramatic over the dependable, the scandalous over the sincere. But real progress, real leadership, and real change come from those who build slowly, steadily, and with integrity. Controversy might bring a crowd, but it's character that brings a community. It's character that creates teams that thrive, relationships that last, and legacies that endure long after the spotlight has moved on. Think of the people you admire most. Not for how loud they were, but for how true they were. For how they stood firm when it would have been easier to fall. For how they chose principle over popularity. For how they didn't let the world change their values, but used their values to try to change the world. Those are people of character, and that's the kind of person the world needs more of. Not the loudest, not the most controversial, but the most consistent. Controversy might make headlines, but character makes history. It's not always glamorous. It doesn't always get clicks. But in the end, it's what matters. It's what people remember. Not what you said in anger, but how you showed up in love. Not how you fought to win, but how you lived to serve. It's what shapes your choices, defines your relationships, and determines whether you lead with fear or with courage, with pride or with purpose. So if given the choice between chasing controversy or cultivating character, choose character. Every time, because when the noise fades and the world forgets the drama, what will be left is the impact you made, the lives you touched, the people lifted, and the example you set. That is what counts. That is what lasts. Character, not controversy, is the true mark of greatness. Unity is stronger than division. In a world increasingly fractured by politics, race, religion, class, and opinion, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing that our differences are greater than what connects us. But history has proven time and again that when people come together, not because they are the same, but because they choose to stand side by side, real power is created, division weakens. It isolates, it creates fear. But unity builds, it strengthens. It offers hope where there was once only conflict, and that hope is what moves societies forward. Division feeds on ego. It thrives in environments where people are more interested in being right than doing what's right. It tells us that, whose versus them, is the only way to survive. It pushes people into corners, builds walls between two enemies, and turns neighbors into enemies. But unity opens doors. It invites conversation. It bridges gaps. It replaces blame with responsibility, suspicion with understanding, and hate with empathy. Unity doesn't erase our differences. It honors them. It makes room for them within a larger vision of shared purpose. Some believe that division is strength, that if you can create enough fear, stir enough anger, and build enough tribes, you'll win, and maybe you will short term. But what you'll win is a broken system, a fractured culture, a country where everyone is shouting and everyone is listening. That's not victory. That's collapse in slow motion. Real leadership doesn't divide, it unites. It doesn't ask, how can I benefit from this conflict? It asks, how can we all move forward together? Unity is not easy. It's not passive. It's not soft. It takes courage to sit down with someone you disagree with and actually hear them. It takes strength to say, I don't see the world the same way you do, but I still see your humanity. It takes maturity to prioritize common ground over personal gain. Unity is not the absence of tension. It's the presence of commitment. Commitment to a shared future, to mutual respect, to solving problems, not just for some, but for all. In times of crisis, unity becomes not just a virtue, but a necessity. When disaster strikes, when a nation is grieving, when the stakes are high, division cannot solve anything. It can't feed the hungry, rebuild the broken, or heal the wounded. But unity rolls up its sleeves. It knocks on doors. It lends a hand. It doesn't ask who you voted for or what your last name is. It simply shows up and gets to work. That's power. That's progress. That's what makes a community, a country, a civilization endure. We don't have to agree on everything to stand together on something. We can debate, challenge, and question. But we must never let disagreement turn into destruction. The moment we stop seeing each other as fellow human beings, we've already lost. But when we lean into unity, we create space for growth, innovation, and healing. We create a culture where people feel safe enough to speak and strong enough to listen. That's the kind of world we should be building. Not one that rewards division, but one that celebrates unity. Every great movement, every turning point in history has come not from a single person yelling the loudest, but from people coming together around a shared vision, from movements built on inclusion, from change driven by solidarity. When we are united, we are unbreakable, not because we all think alike, but because we choose to act together. So when given the choice to divide or to unite, choose unity. Not because it's easy, not because it's perfect, but because it's powerful, because it's how we rise. Because in the face of all that seeks to tear us apart, unity will always be our greatest strength. It is the quiet force behind every lasting victory, every meaningful change, and every step toward a future we can all believe in. Hope is still our greatest power. It may not always make the headlines or trend on social media, but in the quiet moments, when the world feels uncertain, when the weight is too heavy, when the path forward is unclear, hope is the force that keeps us going. It is not blind optimism. It is not wishful thinking. Hope is a decision. It's the conscious choice to believe that tomorrow can be better than today, that broken things can be rebuilt, and that even in the face of struggle, something beautiful is still possible. Hope does not ignore the darkness. It confronts it. It says, I see what's broken, and I still believe it can be healed. It refuses to surrender to despair. It fuels action, not apathy. When we lose hope, we lose direction. We stop trying, we stop caring. But when we choose to hope, we unlock the strength to keep showing up, to keep pushing forward, to keep building the future we dream of. That power lives inside every one of us. And no matter how loud fear or failure may get, hope remains louder when we give it space to speak. Every great achievement, every movement for justice, every innovation that changed the world started with hope. Someone believed things could be different. That belief gave birth to action. And that action, powered by persistence, created change. Hope is the seed from which all progress grows. It allows us to imagine more, to reach further, and to endure the trials that come with doing something meaningful. It is what lifts us up when we fall and reminds us why we started when we feel like giving up. In times of crisis, when systems fail and voices are silenced, hope is what the powerful fear most, because a hopeful people cannot be controlled. A hopeful people will organize, speak out, and rise. Hope gives courage to the quiet, vision to the lost, and strength to the weary. It brings people together across lines of difference. Because when we hope together, we start to see that our futures are tied together. It transforms despair into action, pain into purpose, and dreams into plans. Hope is not naive. It doesn't deny reality, it shapes it. It doesn't pretend everything is fine. It simply believes that fine is not the final chapter. It is the refusal to let darkness have the last word. It's what allows a parent to keep going for their children, an activist to keep marching for justice, a survivor to keep standing even when everything inside them wants to collapse. Hope lives in the stories we tell, the hands we hold, and the choices we make to keep loving in a world that too often gives us reasons to hate. We are living in a time where it is easy to be cynical, easy to be numb. But cynicism is not strength, it's surrender. It's the easy way out. Hope takes more courage. It demands that we keep believing when belief itself feels risky. It asks us to keep reaching for one another even when the world tries to pull us apart. And that's what makes it so powerful. Because when all else is stripped away, money, power, fame, it is hope that keeps the soul alive. So hold on to it, guard it, share it. Because someone out there needs it right now. And maybe, just maybe, your act of hope is the spark that lights someone else's fire. Maybe your belief in something better will remind someone that they are not alone, that they too can rise, that they too can begin again. Hope is not just our light in the darkness. It is the fire that creates dawn. And as long as we carry it, no matter how difficult the journey becomes, we are never without power. Hope is still our greatest power.